There is something happening right now that almost nobody is saying out loud, because saying it out loud makes you sound like you don't understand how the world works, or like you are being dramatic, or like you are somehow failing at something that everyone else seems to be managing fine. Here it is. You can be surrounded by people all day and still feel completely alone. Not lonely because you are isolated, not lonely because you have no one, but lonely in the specific modern way, where you are more reachable than any human being in the history of the species, and somehow still unreached. In 2023, the United States Surgeon General did something unusual. He issued a formal public health advisory, not about a virus, not about a food supply, about loneliness. Dr. Vivek Murthy wrote that lacking social connection carries health risks equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. 15 cigarettes. Not a metaphor, a clinical equivalence, based on mortality data. And at the same moment he was writing that, the average person in the country was spending 2.5 hours a day on social media, more connected by every measurable metric than any generation in human history. Something is not adding up. B-roll, phone screens, social feeds, someone alone in a crowded cafe. Think about who is loneliest right now. You might guess, elderly people, people who live alone, people who lost a spouse, and some of them are. But the data says something unexpected. A 2025 survey of over 7,000 Americans found that 67% of Gen Z is classified as lonely, compared to 45% of baby boomers. The youngest generation, the one that grew up with the internet, the one that has never known a world without instant communication, is the loneliest. And 80% of Gen Z globally report feeling lonely in the past 12 months, despite 73% of them also reporting they are hyper-connected, despite spending more time in contact with other people than any previous generation ever has. Something is not substituting for something. The connection is happening, but the loneliness is not going away. I want to be careful here, because this is the point where it would be easy to say, social media is bad. Put your phone down, go outside. And maybe that is true, but it is not why. And the why matters more than the instruction. In 2023, researchers at Linköping University in Sweden published a study in the journal eLife on oxytocin, the hormone most associated with social bonding, trust, attachment, what some people call the love hormone, though that is not quite accurate and a little embarrassing to say out loud. What they found confirmed something that had been suspected for years. Physical touch increases oxytocin. Eye contact increases oxytocin. Being physically present with someone, in the same room, breathing the same air, increases oxytocin. A text message does not. A video call partially approximates it. A scroll through someone's highlight reel does not register in this system at all. This is not a value judgment about technology. It is a biological statement about how the body decides it is safe, and how it decides it belongs, and how it decides it is not alone. And the body is not wrong. It evolved these pathways over millions of years to distinguish between genuine social connection and the appearance of it. It knows the difference, even when we don't. So when you are lonely, and you reach for your phone, your body does not receive what it actually asked for. The hunger remains. The behavior is repeated. The hunger deepens. There was a neuroscientist at the University of Chicago named John Cacioppo. He spent nearly 30 years studying loneliness, not as an emotion, but as a biological state, with measurable neural correlates and specific physiological consequences. He died in 2018, before he could see how completely right he was about what was coming. What Cacioppo found was a mechanism he called the loneliness loop, and it is the most important thing I have found in all of this research. Here is how it works. Loneliness evolved as a signal, like hunger, like pain. It is supposed to motivate you to do something. In this case, to seek out connection, to repair the social bond, to get back inside the group. For most of human history, that signal worked. You felt lonely. You moved toward people. The loneliness resolved. But Cacioppo found that chronic loneliness, the kind that persists for months and years, does something paradoxical to the brain that experiences it. It creates what he called implicit hypervigilance for social threats. an unconscious, automatic, pre-attentional scanning of the environment for rejection, for exclusion, for danger. In plain terms, the longer someone is lonely, the more their brain begins to read every social situation as a potential threat rather than an opportunity. They want connection more desperately than ever, and trust it less than they ever have. They interpret ambiguous social signals as hostile. They withdraw to protect themselves, and the withdrawal deepens the loneliness, which deepens the hypervigilance, which deepens the withdrawal. The signal that was supposed to bring you back is now keeping you away. And then think about where a chronically lonely person goes to feel less alone. A social media feed, a public performance platform, an environment designed around measurable approval, likes, views, comments, every one of which can be taken away, every one of which is a quantified social judgment, handed to a brain already scanning for rejection, every second it is open. Cacioppo didn't live to see TikTok, but he described it, 30 years before it existed. A psychologist named Melissa Hunt at the University of Pennsylvania ran an experiment that should have made the front page of every newspaper. She took 143 students and randomly assigned them to two groups. One group was asked to limit their use of Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat to 10 minutes per platform per day for 3 weeks. The other group used social media as usual. Not a detox, not a ban. 10 minutes per platform, 30 minutes total, for 3 weeks. The limited use group showed significant reductions in both loneliness and depression, compared to the control group who used social media as normal. 30 minutes a day produced measurable biological relief from the state that 15 cigarettes worth of damage is currently producing. I want to sit with that for a moment, because what it implies is stranger than it first appears. It does not say social media is poison. It says the current dose is above the therapeutic threshold. It says we have not been asking whether this is too much. We have just been taking it. Here is what I think is actually happening. We built the most sophisticated communication network in the history of the species, and we forgot to check whether communication is the same thing as connection. It is not. Communication is the transmission of information. Connection is the experience of being known. You can communicate with 1,000 people and be known by none of them. And your body, your nervous system, your oxytocin pathways, and your threat detection circuits, they know the difference, even when the numbers say otherwise. 67% of the loneliest generation in history is not lonely because they aren't trying. They are lonely because the tools they were given were built for reach, not for depth. Built to maximize engagement, not to satisfy the ancient biological requirement of being genuinely seen. The fix is not complicated. It is just slow. It is one real conversation instead of 10 performed ones. It is 10 minutes less of watching other people live and 1 more minute of living yourself. It is the difference between being reached and being known. And your nervous system has been waiting for that difference to matter to someone.